Okay, child is bused 25, 30 minutes away. All special education kids are. This is a short scenario, so I'm just going to answer the question based upon how it's presented. Until I sort of see the whole thing, I don't know for sure. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that there's so many nooks and crannies in there that this is why it needs to be. That's why I put that little disclaimer in there. Okay, to another school, not an alternative either, while their home school is still considered right here, it was the district decision to create these specialized classrooms within, a designated school building. That's how I'm interpreting it. Regardless, if the home school has a graduation parade, are the SPED kids to be allowed? There was no notice, no invite, nothing. Okay. So school systems, first and foremost, are allowed to concentrate special education services at particular locations within their district for low incident or low occurring disabilities. Now, schools have been abusing that, and they've been writing these gray lines to where they've been getting away with being able to segregate and concentrate services within schools and enforcing or funneling all kids with disabilities, let's say, into behavior units or severe disability units and whatever. Okay, and since it's still within a regular school, they seem to get away with it because, they're sitting there going, well, they're still exposed to the general curriculum and they're still exposed to general education kids. There are still school systems that have standalone special education schools that have no typically developing kids in them at all. And that's a violation of the law, frankly, because they don't have access to the general curriculum, meaning that they don't have a lot of general education teachers in those buildings, if any. And then the second thing is they don't have access to general or general education or typically developing peers. Both are requirements within the IDEA, but they get away with it because parents don't assert themselves to make them get away from those. So they still exist. Now, in this particular situation, because the law allows for the concentration of these resources, and that's the confidence that they exude, then a lot of parents sort of back off. And then, of course, judges, depending on who's making the argument, if it's a bad argument, they'll agree with the school that the school is allowed to do that because my child has a low incident or a low occurring disability. And I even had a school system that created autism units at special, away from their home school, but yet the child themselves needed minimal support within their home school environment. But yet they would force them over here because, we have all these autism services. And when you sit there and you say, well, what services do you have inside of it? Because if you don't have any kind of unique and specialized, peer-reviewed, scientifically based program that makes sense, they can sit there and say it's an autism unit, but what does that mean? It's just full of kids that have autism? Because if that's the case, then it's just discriminatory. We don't have standalone Black classrooms and Latino classrooms and Asian American classrooms. We just don't do that, guys. So to sit there and say, well, we're going to sit there and concentrate all autistic kids. Now, if there's some kind of specialized, peer-reviewed, scientifically based program that makes sense, and few of them have those, then at that point, maybe you can make that argument. But by and large, that's the problem. We don't discriminate. But yet this school system was making that argument that this kid needed to be over there. But then when I blasted their argument that there was nothing special about this classroom, why can't he remain at his home school with minimal supports? Because that's what the law requires. You see, they're only allowed to concentrate these resources when costs are exorbitant with regards to the low occurring disabilities. And the intent behind that was for severely impacted kids, let's say, that need a lot of specialized nursing or other kind of equipment. Truly low incident or low occurring disabilities. But autism nationally, I would not put into the realm of low incident or low occurring. But in this particular school system, how they applied that standard is they said that within their school system, autism is low occurring or low incident. And my thing is, my counter question to them is, are you basing it upon eligibility categories? Because if you're basing it upon a child's diagnosis, you actually have more autistic kids than what you actually are reporting. Because you can sit there and categorize them under speech language impairment or other health impairment or a specific learning disability or intellectual disability. And in order to skirt putting them under the category of autism, which many, many, many schools do. But they were interpreting off of the eligibility category and saying, well, we have more specific learning disabilities than we do autism, and autism's down here. Well, that was artificial. That was artificial by their doing, and it was artificial by their doing so that they could get away with this and classifying things as low incidence so they could sit there and funnel kids out of the feeder schools into a hub school. Now, why would they do something like that? Because, guys, the dirty little secret is with the high stakes testing at the end of the year, that's attached to every Student Succeeds Act and No Child Left Behind before that. Schools track African American students, Latino students, free or reduced lunch students, and special education students. And if they have too many within a particular school, then those subcategory of students could drag the school score down at this elementary school or this middle school. So what they end up doing is saying, well, we have a lot of Latinos, poor kids, and black kids at this school. So we'll call this our failing school, but we'll just put all of these little specialized special education units inside that school as well. So all of those four subgroups of the kids with the most need in this country that have been historically disenfranchised, some of these schools will purposefully create failing schools so they can protect their feeders, their schools out here. And they'll feed, the kids in the other categories, either discipline them out to where their alternative classrooms are also here. There's a lot of sinister stuff that some of these people come up with, and you go, who comes up with this stuff? I could introduce you to a whole bunch of them because somebody thought of this in order to skirt the law, in order to have these schools out here classified as passing schools, and property values go up and all of those things, and then nobody wants to live in this school, but the schools had to sacrifice one or two schools. And then that's also where you have schools that gerrymander, and you go, these school boundaries don't make sense. Well, they do if you understand the demographics in a particular community. And you sit there and you say, well, that's racist or bigoted. Yeah, guys, but I think you'd be shocked that a lot of these administrators tend to be the same color and ethnicity as those that they are disenfranchising. There's no monopoly on being an a-hole. Okay, people work for the institution, they work for the monster, and they end up doing things against people, including those within their own subgroup, which, if you want to recognize that, I don't, but that's how it's done. That's the dirty, okay? So in your particular situation, I don't understand why, but that's typically why they do it. It's lazy. They want to concentrate resources. So let's say they don't have to sit there and hire more special education teachers or more speech language pathologists. We can just sit there and concentrate them here, and we can sit there and check a box, and then use the remainder of the special education funding or the other public funding to resurface our football field or pay the coach over and above his school salary, which happens all the time. Okay, but these are the little tricks of the trade that they do. So in your particular situation, one of the big arguments that I would make is the limited access that your child has to general education peers and opportunities. And so I would make that argument within the IEP team. You can send them over here, but my child's going to participate in general education and extracurricular activities, which is a separate decision by the IEP team. to where your child can participate in extracurricular activities. And it can be defined, and you can sit there and define it as your home school around kids that your child lives around and has interacted with since, let's say, preschool. And you can absolutely have the IEP team do that, and then notate that you need to be provided notice of any activities. And yes, in those particular situations for extracurriculars, it's absolutely appropriate for them to provide the needed support in order for your child to have access to those things.